Hello and welcome along to episode 28 of the Tennis Asia podcast. And on this episode, it's Roland Garros time. Once again, we peruse the draws of the year's second Grand Slam that gets underway on Sunday from a Tennis Asia point of view. And joining me as ever to guide us through there, he's neither a qualifier nor a lucky loser. He's there on merit, Mr. Tennis Asia himself, Eddie McGee. Eddie, how are you?
Hello, Alastair. Yes, very good. I mean, it's been... Again, like 3-4 weeks. When was the last one we did the podcast?
Has going on at the time. Like Madrid, I think, was going on at the time.
Right. Yes. Been too long. There's been a lot of things going on, and I think though I'm ready to focus on the tennis again. And what a good time to do it here with the French Open about to start on Sunday.
Qualifying is still ongoing, so the draw's obviously not completely fixed just yet. I think that will wrap up later on today. We're doing this on a Friday evening, Seoul time, but still plenty to get stuck into. We'll go through the draws in turn. I think we'll start off with the men's. I think it's also fair to say it's a little bit thin in terms of interest from this region on the men's side. Obviously, we've got a couple of the bigger names, Zheng Qinwen, Jerry Shang out through injury. Still quite a few things to get us excited about. We might as well get it out of the way first of all. Even though we usually go section by section, we might as well start briefly at the bottom of the draw, the very bottom of the draw, and get things out of the way quite early. I seem to recall you speaking in Hong Kong with Kei Nishikori at the beginning of this year, and he answered your question. He really wanted to play the new generation of top players on the biggest of stages. He's certainly got that wish. It's a bit of be careful what you wish for, maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't think that was specifically from my question. But like, yeah, he did express, and I think I wrote about that probably on the article on the website as well, about, what is keeping him going at this stage, obviously 35 years of age and not getting any younger, and certainly unlikely to reach the sort of heights that, obviously being number 4 in the world back in 2015, 2016, obviously he was an elite level player. He said his problem with injuries, of course, but he's now, back at a fairly decent level. So, but, what was keeping him going? And the thing that he said was that he really wants to be able to test himself against this new generation of players. And he knows that the level has gone up in terms of how big players are hitting the ball these days. He mentioned specifically being able to practice with Yannick Sinner. That was very insightful for him. It gave him an insight into the sort of, where tennis is at right now. And he really just expressed, specifically he'd love to play these guys like Sinner and Alcaraz. And of course, he's drawn against Alcaraz, who is the number 2 seed. I mean, not in exactly ideal circumstances, unfortunately, for Kei, because he just had to retire, didn't he, in Geneva. He got through the first round match against Lerner Tien, of course, the up-and-coming young American player. But he did come through well in that match from a set down. I mean, definitely, it's always a question when you're thinking about Nishikori these days. Is that going to affect him, when he gets into long physical battles? So obviously not ideal having to grind out a 3-set match. And I thought he did well because, Lerner was actually playing pretty well. And I think, he went, up a set, Lerner, and then immediately broke in the start of the second. But I thought, Nishikori, channeled that some of the anger into playing better, and he ended up a deserved winner in the end. Unfortunately, he went on to play Karen Khachanov and retired. What happened was it was the match stopped with the score at 7-5. Khachanov was leading 7-5, and then Nishikori was up 5-2 in the second set, but it stopped because of the rain. But then before they could come back and play, Nishikori, gave the walkover and withdrew. Right, so he didn't play on, and I guess probably picked up some nego and probably one eye on the French Open. So
Right.
I don't know his exact state, but that doesn't exactly give me much confidence of how for him in this matchup against Alcaraz. Obviously, Alcaraz fresh off winning Rome and playing a really good match against Sinner. Obviously, Sinner had a great week in terms of getting to that final and maybe surprised people with a little bit with how quickly he settled into that. So for Alcaraz to step up and win that match, and the conditions in Rome very similar, sort of more similar to Paris. So it's going to be a tough one for Nishikori. Of course, he can do well on clay. It is a surface that he had a lot of success on in the past, and his game, he moves well, and he is a surface that's he plays well on. It's just if he's struggling a bit physically, is he going to be able to grind out? Because to beat Alcaraz, he's probably going to have to grind that out for a while if he's got any chance.
Yeah.
And that makes me doubt that he's going to be able to get through this one. Never mind.
Probably not going to get it done in straight. Is probably fair to say. Let's move on, and we'll go back up to the top of the draw. Actually, when scrolling down the draw, I think it was actually the first one of our players to get to really talk about. It was quite a long way down, actually. I did mention in the intro there is no Zhang Qinwen, there's no Jerry Shang either. Would I be right in saying we have a new Chinese number one right now?
You mean in terms of like the ATP rankings?
Yeah,
because Zhang Zhizhen, and I think at the moment we do, because it's just about, because Bu Yunqiaoketi is now at 70 in the rankings, one spot above Jerry Shang at 71, and with Zhang Zhizhen just below at 81, and so that's pretty nice for Bu, but it's come because the other two aren't playing.
Right, exactly. But Bu, he certainly deserves his ranking. He comes in good form. He's fresh in here off I think back-to-back finals. He got to the final of the Turin Challenger, then in and then in Hamburg. Obviously, he lost both of those finals. He's got, I believe, a qualifier or a lucky loser. I don't know if the actual identity has been revealed yet in the first round. And he's in an okay sort of section. He would have Chapeau in the next round in Djokovic's part of the draw.
Yeah, so Bu Yunqiaoketi, I mean, he hadn't had a lot of success on clay, and he isn't so experienced on it at this level, but struggling a little bit in terms of he couldn't get a win in the main draw on the ATP Tour level. He did qualify for one tournament, but then lost in that first round, and then he went into the 175 tournament, and he got a good result because he managed to, or good results I should say, because he went all the way to the final, ended up losing to Alexander Bublik. That was in Turin. But for him to get, he beat Fonio, and then in the semi-final came against Camilo Ugo Carabelli. So, more experienced clay court players that he came through. So, and I think Bublik was playing particularly well that weekend, and came through in straight sets in the final. But it's probably good for him to be able to get those under his belt. He went on and to play in Hamburg, but then lost to Francis Tiafoe. So, I mean, maybe it's going to be difficult for him to, when he's playing some of these better players. But as you said, he opens against a qualifier or a lucky loser. And then, perhaps it gives him a chance to progress. And then, Shapovalov or Pedro Martinez in the second round. I wouldn't say it's impossible for him to get through that. I do think, Chapeau is beatable. Bu will have to cut out the errors and try and bring some of the errors out from either of those players. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he can go through and play Djokovic. I mean, Djokovic is sort of strange now, because it really does feel like, Sinner and Alcaraz have moved on, and we're in their sort of era now. And Djokovic is, you got Murray, and then he was doing pretty well in Australia, but then he got injured, and then since then it's not really been much that gives us much hope. And McDonald, probably one that he can get through, but then if he plays against maybe Corentin Moutet in the second round, I don't know. Like, with the French crowd behind him, it potentially could frustrate him a little bit. But I mean, you would have to say, I suppose, from the Djokovic's point of view, it certainly could have been tougher in that section. I mean, interesting little section. Fernley and Wawrinka. I mean, either of those players, that's an interesting first round match. But I mean, in terms of having Medvedev as the other big seed in his in his section, it could be worse. I mean, obviously Medvedev is not particularly comfortable on clay, so be interesting anyway. And in terms of the other Asian players, well, we don't have many.
There's Yoshi. I can see Yoshi Nishioka there. He's got Popyrin in the first round.
Popyrin, yeah, interesting. I mean, well, not particularly hopeful for this, because I mean, Nishioka is he's also been, I mean, it's not his best surface, and he lost to Lajovic in last in Rome, and then that he hadn't played any other matches on clay. So going in against Popyrin, against the player who is pretty solid, who came through Jarry and Fernley in Geneva just passed, and he's not too bad on this surface. So let's see though. Yeah, I mean, potentially he could get through that one. I don't massive hope, but then he does get through. Arthur or Tabilo could be tricky. One more Asian player that does come into the draw, though, is a player that has just qualified. If we're talking about, one more Asian player is Benjamin Hassan, who represents the Lebanon, and he came through against James Trotter of Japan in strange sets, and that is actually Hassan's first major. He's qualified for his first major at the age of 30. So, and he managed to come through all of his qualifying matches against Pavel Kotev and against Geymard Weyenberg in the second round. Yeah, and then James Trotter. So coming through in straight sets in all those matches. And yeah, I mean, must be a great feeling for him to do that. It's not long after as well, we had Hadi Habib, the other Lebanese player who qualified in Australia this year, for the first time, and he had a massive support. So it'll be interesting for Hassan. We don't know who he's going to be against yet, but he's maybe going to have some of that big support as well. I mean, with him, and potentially he could be playing, another qualifier, lucky loser.
Qualifier, yeah.
Or it could be a big one. It could be against Tommy Paul. It could be against Casper Ruud.
Casper Ruud, yeah. I think in terms of qualies, obviously Summit Nagal lost in qualifiers. Coleman Wong is out. Coleman Wong's out on the town quite a lot at the moment as well. Hadi Habib, as you mentioned, he was in qualies. He lost as well. Just from a sort of tennis Asia perspective, a few of the veterans of the Asia swing of the challengers are in the main draw. Tristan Skulkade, of course, who participated in this part of the world earlier this year, he actually got the wild card that I think goes to Tennis Australia as a reciprocal from the French Open, Australian Open. And I believe you just told me that last year's Seoul champion, Vasilashvili, has also qualified.
Well, it looked like he was about to qualify. I actually no, he's not yet done. He's up 6-2, 5-2. So he's still got one game almost to win. Yeah, it's looking likely, but yeah, of course, from Georgia, technically on that border between between Europe and Asia. We're being talking about geography, but yeah, but of course, yeah, we can see one player on the screen as well. Of course, Alexander Bublik, representing Kazakhstan.
Sure.
He's there against James Duckworth, and he will take on.
I'm playing an Asia Swing veteran as well. Yeah.
True. Interesting matchup, but maybe he could get. I think I would probably think Bublik would get through, but you never know sometimes with Bublik. But I think it would be difficult for him to get past Alex de Minaur if they do play in that second round. Alex is playing at a very consistent high level and is a kind of player that would, maybe straight Bublik. So yeah, a tricky one, but yeah, interesting section there. Of course, you can see Hurkacz and Fonseca. That's definitely a strong tie in that first round. So I think a lot of people would be watching that. If we were talking about enthusiastic fans, Fonseca's definitely got them.
Okay, anything else catch your eye, Tennis Asia or non-Tennis Asia, in the men's before we move on to the women's?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's not really any much more from Tennis Asia. I mean, I guess you have to look at Sinner. Obviously, number one seed here is drawing against Rinderknecht. Decent draw for him, you'd have to say, but maybe against a French player. But I think, having that, probably a French player was going to get some backing, but I don't think that's bad for Sinner to have that to start off, and then maybe against Atman or Gasquet, you have to say these are not players that should that he should fear. And perhaps though, Davidovich-Fokina in third round is an interesting one there, and obviously Rublev and Fils in there, so that's would be interesting. I think potentially if you got say an Arthur Fils against Sinner in the fourth round. I'd still fancy Sinner to get through, but it could be an interesting match, and then Draper as well in that section. So you never know in Fonseca. So these are sort of players on the up, and that's going to be interesting to see. Draper sort of surprised me a bit in terms of the way that he's come through. So he's so solid now, and he's always had the game, but also being able to apparently get some good results as well on clay, which is not always expected from the British players, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the overall draw, you'd have to say that it's probably not too bad for Sinner, and then on this side you got Alcaraz in the same section. I mean, this section is not bad, you'd have to say, for Alcaraz.
Sure.
Even with Tsitsipas there, I don't really see much threat. I mean, Tommy Paul and Rude, I don't know.
That's
Musetti or Runa is probably, I would say, the big test that would maybe come in the quarters, for him. So Runa opens against Bautista Agut though, so that's potentially a tough one.
Okay, let's move across to the women now. Obviously, there's a little bit more interest from this part of the world in the women's one. We will start with the, I guess she's still the player of the moment. That is Alex Eala. I know that she took just one game off Marta Kostyuk in Italy. She did come through a couple of rounds of doubles, so she has been getting some clay court time. She has been drawn in the first round. I think she's probably the first Asian player we will get to as we scroll down the women's draw. She faces Colombia's Emiliana Arango, who's at a career high ranking currently in the 70s. And then there is potentially, unless I'm wrong, and I'm not wrong, just looking at this, potentially the Tennis Asia Bowl of Tennis Asia Bowls in the second round.
Yeah, so for Alex, it's her first slam, right? So she's probably going to be excited, of course, but then maybe a bit nervous as well. This is her sort of a bit new to us, let's say, since Miami, sort of breaking through into this main WTA tour sort of level, but not a bad draw, you would have to say, for in terms of a first round. You get Voiding and any seeded player, and then Arango, who has done okay this year in terms of she had a decent number of wins, but it's not. I don't think it's a player that she will be fearing. It's just can sort of bring her best level on this surface. It's not. I mean, you mentioned before that obviously she lost to Marta Kostyuk, and it was a pretty one-sided affair. Good, doing well with Goff in the doubles, so that probably has some help. Obviously, she did not bad in Madrid, but the conditions are quite different. To Paris, so Paris, it's going to be slower and play like a proper clay court, and I think it is something. It is a match that she will be able to get through, and I think she might do it. Actually, I think she enjoys these occasions, and if she does get through, you said like she will get through to either play Pavlyuchenkova or Zheng Qinwen. Now that is a bit of a stinker draw to start off for Zhang, because Pavlyuchenkova, a very experienced player herself, and one that's caused trouble for her. So I would say that if Zhang can get through that one, then she has a good chance to go far, because obviously, the clay season didn't start particularly well for her, but she did make the quarters in Rome. She did lose out though, but the big thing for her, for Zhang, was being able to get through against Aryna Sabalenka, finally getting a victory of her in the seventh attempt, wasn't it? So, and also doing it in straight sets. So that's going to give her a little bit of confidence, because they could actually play each other. Obviously, Sabalenka's there as the first seed, so they could play each other in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But if she's going to play Sabalenka, doing it on clay is where she wants to be doing it. And given that recent result, is not something that she should fear. And perhaps, she's thinking like, I know how to play against her now. Would say though, she does have Peyton Stearns there in in her section. They could meet in the third round, and Stearns, of course, just coming off a long run as well. In Rome, so not exactly ideal in terms of but I still think that Zhang plays her best or on clay, or is capable of playing the highest level tennis. And I think that, and it may be what Sabalenka felt when they played each other, I think that Zhang's ball on a clay court and her ability to get that ball in consistently is much better on the clay court, and it's hard for players to deal with. And so it's interesting. So definitely in terms of
the win could have kickstarted her season. I know that at the start of the year, had we said she would only be seeded number 8 at Roland Garros, we'd have been quite surprised. But maybe that Sabalenka win has kickstarted the season. And as you said, some tough matches, but possibly get through the early rounds, potential to go deep. We don't have to go very far before we find poor old Yan Yue. She's been handed a very, very tough ask with Jasmine Paolini, the 4th seed.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Yue, I mean, she actually did okay in the clay season. Obviously, she had struggled in terms of she slipped down the rankings, and so she went down to sort of the challenger level and ITF level, and she got some results on clay. I think it was in she won the title, right? It was the 100 title,
right?
And she beat Greet Minin in the final, who was the number one seed, I think, and she came back to win that. So, yeah, I mean, she does have a game that she obviously can get some results on the clay, but you would have to say it's a big step up in level to play a player like Paolini, the way she's playing, obviously coming fresh off of the title in Rome, and yeah, it's going to be so tough. And yeah, I'm not predicting an upset there particularly. Tomjanovic is or Maya Joint who waits, but yeah.
Okay, right back in her is heads off section 4. She is the 12th seed, and she's got could be a tricky first round there.
Yes, and Rebecca against Belinda Bencic. I mean, it's probably one of the players out of any the unseeded players you would say that's one I want to avoid. And personally, Rebecca, she's been struggling a bit recently, and I just think that's got upset potential really written all over it, and definitely one of the ties of the opening round. And I do see that it's going to be tough, and then it's not exactly the easiest section for her. I mean, probably not too bad in the second round she gets through. Iva Jovic, though, of course, is a young player, but potential. But then potentially, Ostapenko in the third round. And then in the fourth round, maybe Iga Swiatek. So, yeah, that's difficult.
Well, you say that, but surely it's going to be the winner of Raducanu and Wang Jinyu.
Well, yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, that Emma's not been too bad on the clay, but I don't think that's a great first round for her. Yeah, against Wang, because Wang, yeah, she's a solid player, and in her best, she would be, it's probably seeded going into the slams. So, and yeah, for an opening round match, she's going to have to be. I think Wang has got to play her best, but because Emma has been playing pretty regularly now. Be interesting to see if Wang. I actually think whoever gets through, Raducanu or Wang, maybe can give Swiatek a little bit of trouble if she gets through, because just the way Swiatek is struggling a little bit at the moment, she just doesn't look the same player that she was last year before. She had to stop playing basically, and
right.
Yeah, I think if you want to play her, I think these players want to play her in the second round, but it'd be interesting because Kostyuk in that section is just an interesting section to me, and potentially we might get a surprise player coming out of it, out of that section.
Swiatek has just confirmed her participation in Seoul this year. I saw that posted this week. Obviously, she was supposed to play last year as well. No one knew quite why she suddenly pulled out, but then of course we found out a little bit later. We talked a little bit about Bencic, of course, being the very dangerous, very definition of a dangerous floater. But I think we've got possibly an even bigger one in the next section of the draw. Obviously, last year we just talked about Iga. Naomi Osaka came pretty close to dispatching Iga last year as a dangerous floater. She's drawn Badosa in the first round here. Neither of them are going to be particularly thrilled about this matchup.
No, and yeah, and probably especially Badosa's stressing a bit. She's like, I mean, for Osaka, I think in some ways it's clay, so it's a surface that she's had to learn to play on. So maybe the pressure that she puts on herself is not much. But she stepped down, obviously, and won that 125 title in San Malo, which was good. And then, sort of carried some of that form on into Rome, where she reached the fourth round and lost out to Peyton Stearns. That was a pretty tight match. And obviously, Peyton went on to semi-finals. Stearns is a tough competitor. I've, watched her before. I mean, watched her in Seoul actually as well because she played against Raducanu here, and
Right, that was
I think
almost a 3 hour match, wasn't it?
it was. I think it was 2 sets, but yeah, 2 tie breaks. Yeah, it went on for a while, but
Yeah.
Peyton Stearns, tough competitor, and she's got tennis to back up. So, I don't think that was such a bad result for Osaka, and a tough draw for her, but this is about as well as she's done on clay. So I think it's one that she can win, and yeah, if she does do that, gets a little bit easier in the second round, and McCartney Kessler or Elena Gabriela Ruse. So, and yeah, Kasatkina is the seed in that section. So Kasatkina has not been playing well in the last several months. So yeah, get through that first round for Osaka, and then potentially she go on a little run. Mira Andreeva though is there, waiting probably in the fourth round, and that is going to be not one that I would particularly expect her to get through actually, but let's see, because Andreeva is also still finding her feet somewhat, but although she is I would say an elite player at this point, but Yulia Putintseva is there. She's lucked out in terms of getting a qualifier, and potentially facing another qualifier in the second round if they were to get through against Katie Volinets. So, yeah, obviously a huge, definitely like tie the first round, Osaka against Badoza. Everyone's going to be tuning in for that one. And looking down, any other?
Well, looking down, we actually mentioned Peyton. I think Peyton Stearns actually in the first round plays Eva Liss. Now we mentioned, I could be wrong on this, but I think I'm right. Obviously, we mentioned Alex Eala having doing okay in Madrid, and then having a dismal day at the office in Rome. Or actually, she might play. Sure, she does play Eva Liss, but I know who did play Eva Liss in Rome and had a dismal day, and that was Moyuka Uchijima after a fantastic round the previous tournament. I think she only got one game off her. She did, though, get a win in the 1-2-5, at least in a round in Paris last week. And she comes in, she's got a nice draw here. She's got a qualifier.
Yeah. Definitely nice
for her. Long-winded introduction, that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's okay. But definitely nice for her to be able to sort of get that to ease herself in, because it's maybe a little bit disappointing sort of clay season for her so far, in terms of because she's shown that she's very competitive on the surface, and then obviously quarterfinals in Madrid, and I was sort of expecting her to do something in this clay season. Obviously she's done that pretty well. She beat one of the fellow Tennis Asia players that we cover, is Mananchaya Sawankau in that match in Paris, but lost in the second round pretty badly, is maybe unexpectedly, against Rakimova. Yeah, she's going to have to step it up right here, but perhaps drawing qualifier that might give her the sort of chance to ease herself and find her tennis a bit. And then I do think, she can come through against either Haley Baptiste or Haddad Maya in the second round.
Yeah.
So, I think she's shown that she has the ability to beat these bigger players. Emma Navarro is a potential player that she could face. As Emma Navarro is the number 9 seed, and so they could play. Incidentally, Emma Navarro just lost to Haddad Maya in Strasbourg in the quarterfinals yesterday. So that was Haddad Maya won from a set down, and but Navarro hasn't exactly lit the world up in terms of her clay performances, and this season she hasn't gone past the quarterfinal. So going into the French, maybe this is a possibility that another for a little breakthrough for Mayuki Chichima, but
It's
we're always expecting that to happen. That incredible run that she had last year was basically what in the early days of our podcast, right? So
right. Yes.
and that was an
It
incredible
was
run.
the Uchijima cast in those days. I think that wraps up the confirmed ones. I know that Hibino's out of the qualies. You just mentioned Salenko. I think she lost in the qualies as well. Anyone likely to come through?
Oh, the qualification. Yeah,
Yeah.
so so it's still going on. So I mean, we just have the one Asian player that has qualified, and that is Joanna Garland. She's the only
Hmm.
one to come through, but she represents, of course, Chinese Taipei. But so she's born, actually, she's born in England, right? But she's half
Yeah.
Taiwanese, and she born in Stevenage, by the way. But she lived in Taiwan, and that's she moved to Taiwan when she was 10, and she stayed there while her family eventually moved back. She stayed there with her auntie and stayed
Okay.
in Kaohsiung to continue schooling and pursue her tennis career there. Make her way on the ITF junior circuit in Asia. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's worked out for her. She's still only 23. She's qualified for her first major here. So great for her. And in terms of she hasn't a lot of it, wins or big matches on clay, but the last biggest title she's won actually is a 35 title.
Okay.
So although she's been in a 60 final, but she lost the one in Australia, but that was in a hard court. But it's good for her, and of course, in terms of the players that she could face, potentially some big players. So, I mean, if we look, I mean, she could end up playing Uchijima. She might get
Mm.
an All Asians clash there, or it could be someone big like Madison Keys.
That's in keys.
Um,
Yeah.
she could play against Katie Bolter. She'd probably, I mean, if I was her, I'd take that
Know her
because
very
Naomi
well.
Bolter.
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. I mean, just qualifying, isn't it? It's always just like going to be such a nice experience for any of these players. You get that bigger check, but then also, yeah, just the experience, and it's just maybe the pressure's off a little bit. You just gotta try and see if you can shake off any nerves and bring your best, and maybe she can do that.
But potentially career changing qualifying for a Grand Slam for the first time. Anything else in general catch your eye about the women's side of the Roland Garros draw?
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about Paulini. I think she also has a good chance for going on a bit of a run here.
Okay.
Although we got to hope that she doesn't have because maybe a bit of a hangover after winning Rome. I don't know. Maybe she has a literal hangover. I don't know if she drinks, but maybe she after that one, she allowed herself a little drink, a little wine. But like, I don't think so. Like, and it's bad for her this section. I mean, although you do have Schwantek there, I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of hard for me to write off Schwantek, but I just think that if she was going to ever have, and all the greats do occasionally have, slams where they lose early, right?
Of
If it
course. Yeah.
came this now, then it wouldn't be particularly surprising, would it, for Schwantek? Obviously, that's going to be quite detrimental for her in terms of the rankings and stuff. But
Right.
it's a tough section there, and then Paulini perhaps has an opportunity again to go far, and that's going to be an interesting story again because a lot of people perhaps ever since she started doing well in the slams, I think she's been underestimated, but it's clear that she's got. I think she's proven at this point she's got game. So
Mm.
also, like, I do think it's going to be interesting to see if Zheng can actually step up here and go on a run. I mean, she should be making some run And if I was her, I mean, I would be thinking you want to be making at least quarters, right? I mean, I guess being 8th seed, that's sort of evident, right? But
That's par, yeah.
and yeah, so that's something I'm going to be keeping my eye on. I think maybe she's also sort of gone under the radar a bit because she has sort of not done too much this year, but you know, I don't think that's such a bad thing. And at the end of the day, I think she has the game that suits this surface well. Mukova there, I'm just looking at that. She's in the same section as Pegula. Yeah, perhaps she can go far. I think here. Let's see if Jabeur can catch fire. But Goff, I would have to say,
favorite.
I don't know, but she has a great chance, right? But yeah, I'd put her in the top 2, right? So it's maybe hard to sort of say, you know, to maybe Sabalenka probably deserves it as the top. I mean, and also you have to kind of respect Swiatek, but I do think Goff, maybe you can make her the number 2 at least here, and I think her section pretty good, and I think it's a great opportunity for her as well. So Goff and perhaps Paulini are the ones that I would sort of be expecting to go far, but and then probably Sabalenka, but as I said before, Zheng, she's perhaps be able to cause an upset.
Well, I've had my usual £5 each way on Ostapenko to win the French Open, so we'll see how long I'm still going on that one. I'm counting my winnings already. Okay, so Roland Garros qualifiers, I believe, will be wrapped up today. The main action starts on Sunday. We're very lucky actually here, as there is pretty much wall-to-wall coverage on the local sports channels. Just before we sign off, obviously we were talking about Roland Garros in the very early podcasts that we did more than a year ago now. Someone else that we used to mention, I have to mention him very, very briefly, in that he's playing in Korea this week. This is some kind of military service for Kwon Sonu. He's playing almost every week. He's in Andong this week.
Yes. And
Daegu next week, Changwon the week after.
I'd actually sort of overlooked this until you pointed it out to me, because I mean, there's so much tennis going on all the time, right?
Tennis,
and sort of, Kwon Sonu is at the back of my mind, where quite far at the back while he's doing his military service. But yes, obviously, although he's doing that, he does have permission. He's allowed to play the domestic tournaments. Of course, he played the challengers in Korea, back in April. And he's now playing at M15. It's the lowest professional tier that you can play. But he's come through against the other Korean players pretty straightforward fashion in straight sets. So he just beat Lee Duck-hee, but that was with a retirement from Lee. A shame for him, but plays in an Aussie, Jake Delaney, in the semi. So potentially this could be a title, the first title coming for Kwon since he's joined the army. And I mean, that would be a bit of a boost. I should say it would be the first proper pro title, but he did play one of those domestic tournaments that are, not an official tour. He did win one of those though.
The army versus North Jolla province or something like that. I think it is. Yeah. Okay. We'll keep an eye on Kwon as ever. We'll also keep more than one eye on the French Open. Going to be challenging, but we do have any other business.
Just one thing I wanted to say was that, because we're on the topic of Kwon, Chong Hyun is going to be continuing on the Challenger circuit. So during this French Open,
right?
I think it's
Is he in America now?
Yeah, the US. He'll be playing the Challenger tournaments there, and then I saw that he's also going to be continuing to play in America. They don't have Challengers after those first 2 tournaments, but they do have ITF, so there's some M25s. I guess he'll play, and he's probably just chosen to say, I'm going to stay in America, and then there'll be some challengers, further challengers down the line, I'm guessing. So seems sensible enough for him. He's just going to be playing in the hard courts while everyone's playing on clay.
Okay. Thank you as ever for joining us. We've got 2 weeks of Grand Slam action to look forward to. Enjoy the French Open, and we'll speak soon. And hopefully next time we speak, there will still be some interest from our part of the world in the main draws.
Yeah. Cheers.